Thank you, Sean, and Ascend. Well, in preparation for today's Science of Mind lesson, I direct your attention to the big screens and let us share this affirmation. I am open and receptive as I receive this message today. Something I am about to hear applies to my life. I am here by divine appointment to receive spiritual tools for personal transformation and to help make the world a better place. My life's purpose is already within me, and I am committed to its unfoldment. As I hear truth today, I am set free, and so are you. Let's grow together. I read about the small Texas town of Mount Vernon, and in that town, an establishment called Drummond's Bar began construction on a new building that would allow them to accommodate more customers. And the local Baptist church, which was opposed to the consumption of alcohol, started some special weekly prayer meetings asking God to prevent this new tavern from being completed. Well, construction began, and it progressed right up to the week before opening time when lightning struck the tavern and burned it to the ground. And the church folks were rather smug about that until the bar owner sued them on the grounds that they were responsible for the destruction of his building. And in its reply to the court, the church vigorously denied any responsibility for the building's loss. And as the trial began, the judge looked over the paperwork and said, I really don't know how I'm going to decide this case. It appears that we have a bar owner who believes in the power of prayer and an entire church congregation that does not. Well, we believe in the power of prayer, don't we? Well, maybe we do, and maybe we don't. And maybe whether we believe depends on the circumstances. Now, in this teaching, we maintain that prayer must be backed up by belief, else it does no good. Belief is the foundation of every success that ever was, ever is, and ever shall be. Napoleon said that few really believe. The most only believe that they believe, or even make believe. Now, of course, Napoleon was referring to belief in the positive sense of the word. The fact is that everyone believes in something. It's just that so often we believe in lack and limitation. So we could say that belief is the foundation of every failure that ever was, ever is, and ever shall be. So if we're not living the life of our dreams, it's not that we lack belief. It's that we seem to have a capacity for believing in lack. And all too often we affirm things like, oh, it's too good to be true, a limiting belief. And while we may have no trouble at all believing it's too good to be true, we may have difficulty believing it's too bad to be true. When we're in the midst of a negative circumstance or experience, we may even predict more of it. You know, like the old superstition, bad things come in threes. And then when the next two bad things come along, we say, see, I told you so. I just knew it. This is the way it works. This stuff always happens to me. You can't win for losing. Well, this is a negative use of faith. And for many people, it's their default position. They may attempt to use their faith positively when disaster strikes, but they may be so out of practice that their attempts at believing in the good will fail. Here's something I saw years ago on a church marquee. Is faith your steering wheel or your emergency kit? Belief or faith in a religious sense is frequently something that we try to generate when we find ourselves in trouble, in dire straits. And yes, in the words of an old gospel song, sometimes you have to be knocked down to make you look upward. Or as the saying goes, when you hit rock bottom, there's nowhere to go but up. But these rock bottom moments have a way of waking us up to what we're thinking and feeling and doing. And those crisis moments often are lessons that show us that there is a better way. But I want to talk today about shadows of doubt. Not those big dramatic crises that come from time to time, but our everyday doubts that, because they're so much of our daily consciousness, drag us down and keep us from living the life of our dreams. We set our goals, we do our affirmations and prayers, but then that little voice starts nagging at us. Times are tough. The economy is terrible. A lot of people have tried this and failed. Not only did they fail, but some of them lost everything they had. Your family and friends may tell you horror stories of how badly things turned out for someone who tried the very thing that you're considering. And those people may mean well. They may think they're protecting you. But their negative comments can be a negative blow to your ability to act. And these doubters are the first ones to shoot down your ideas. They love to say things like, your idea is never going to work, so don't even bother wasting your time. And they can drain away all of your excitement with a single derogatory comment. They don't have the guts to try anything on their own, so they try to bring other people down to cover up their own laziness or lack of confidence. Remember who those people are so that you're prepared to ignore their predictions of doom and gloom. You know, it's been said that if you want to be rich, don't talk to a bum, talk to a rich person. And it's the same thing when you're trying to go for your dreams. You've got to seek out the people who will reinforce your attempts to be positive and forward-looking. Another way of dealing with these pessimists is to use their assurances that you can't do it as a catalyst for positive action. Trying to prove something wrong or someone wrong may not be the best motive for positive action, but if it works for you, go for it. I can't do it, huh? Well, I'll show you. Well, that beats, yeah, you're probably right. There's no point in trying. And another type to look out for are those helpful folks who are full of facts. Things like, did you know that 90% of startup businesses fail? Do you have any idea how competitive this field is? Do you know what a small percentage of a chance you have of being successful? Did you know that if you're not married by the age of 30, you probably never will be? Now, these people will constantly remind you about how slim your chances are of being successful. And they'll quote industry, social, and academic statistics. Now, what you have to keep in mind is that these facts and figures have absolutely nothing to do with you. Do the statistics mention you by name? No, they do not. Statistics are just numbers, and they might not even be correct. Remember how Mark Twain characterized them. He said there are lies, damned lies, and statistics. Statistics do not represent you and what you bring to the table. Stories about people who failed are not stories about you. You need to constantly remind yourself that you possess a unique combination of characteristics that no one else has. Statistics are about the average person, but the average person doesn't exist. Average is a composite of everyone, whereas you are an individual. You are not average. And besides that, if the statistics state that only about 1 out of 1,000 can do something, and if all 1,000 people believed that statistic and didn't try, nothing would ever get done. Look at it this way, too. If the odds are greatly against you doing something, most people won't even attempt it. And that leaves the field wide open for you. If people doubt how far you'll go so far that you can't hear them anymore. Unless you decide to live on a deserted island, you can't really avoid the naysayers. But you can refuse to buy the negativity that they're selling. Don't let them steal your faith because they've lost theirs. There are all kinds of people who will attempt to disrupt your belief in your good. But the most dangerous person of all is you. It's relatively easy to shrug off other people's negative comments, but when the comments come from yourself, that's another story. Stuff like, oh, I could never do that. I don't know how to do that. Who do I think I am? I'd better keep quiet, or maybe I'll get fired or rejected or disapproved of. I'm not important enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not this. I'm not that. Now, this inner voice is a force to be reckoned with, because if it's not put in its proper place, it can destroy any chance we have of happiness. Shakespeare may have said it best when he wrote, "Our doubts are traitors, and make us lose the good we oft might win by fearing to attempt." We betray ourselves by denying ourselves even the possibility of attempting something new. And then our spirits shrink a little and our brave hearts shut down. Now, we all have doubts from time to time, but successful people don't let them derail them from whatever it is they want to accomplish. Allowing self-doubt to prevent you from grabbing opportunities that come your way is an act of self-sabotage. So how can you deal with self-doubt in a constructive way? Well, here are 7 suggestions. First, stop making excuses. We may be afraid to fail. We may be afraid we're going to look bad. We may be afraid to take on more things than we think we can handle. So, we make excuses for why an opportunity that presents itself isn't a good fit. As Stephen Pressfield says in his book, Do the Work, the enemy is our chattering brain, which, if we give it so much as a nanosecond, will start producing excuses, alibis, transparent self-justifications, and a million reasons why we can't, shouldn't, or won't do what we know we need to do. Think back on the opportunities in life that you've turned down. What reasons did you give yourself? Were those legitimate reasons or just excuses? Excuses are mental barriers that we build that hold us back. Second, choose your close circle very carefully. We noted a moment ago that there's no such thing as an average person, but there is an average that counts, and that is that we tend to become the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. Now, I've been unable to find a scientific study that specifically validates this, but it makes sense to me. I think it's the truth. Those we spend time with have a profound effect on us, whether we acknowledge it or not. So who do you spend most of your time with? And what effect do they have on you? And when you spend the time with them, do you feel better about yourself or worse? Choose your close circle carefully. Our third idea, raise your self-awareness, your self-consciousness. Self-awareness is one of the most powerful tools in your arsenal. We often say in this teaching that we don't tell you what to think, we try to teach you how to think. And knowing how to think is vital. But equally important is being totally aware of what we think. Now, you may think you know what you think, but if you do some soul searching, you may discover that you're not always aware of just how often you're indulging in negative stuff. Learning how to recognize when your self-talk takes a turn for the worse is crucial. So when you hear yourself saying, I can't, or I don't know, or what if, a red flag should go up. Instead of telling yourself, I can't do X, say, I can't do X yet, but I'm working on it. Or if you start wondering, what if I fail? You can respond by saying, then I'll try again. Being self-aware can help you uncover your self-doubt and can help you understand the root causes of your self-doubt. What situations trigger self-doubt? If it's a lack of skill in any given area, resolve to do something about it. For example, it may be a fear of delivering presentations at work or at a club. Or it might be anxiety of having to make small talk with strangers at a reception. Just about anything can be learned. Read a relevant book, get the training you need, get a coach to help you, or better yet, get to know and like yourself so that your feeling of self-worth enables you to do what you want or need to do. Which leads us to our fourth idea, practice self-compassion. Self-compassion is simply being kind to yourself. There's a strong correlation between self-compassion and mental health. This includes reduced anxiety, greater life satisfaction, and higher self-esteem. How do you know if you have work to do in this area? Well, ask yourself these questions. When you fail at something that's important to you, do you keep things in perspective? Or do you become consumed by feelings of inadequacy? When something doesn't go right, do you keep your emotions in balance? Doubt can lurk there, but doubt cannot thrive in the presence of love. Try loving yourself and watch the shadows of doubt dissipate in the light of love. Fifth, stop asking for validation. Seeking input and advice from others can be helpful. However, if you're always asking others what they think before you'll make a decision, you might be weakening your faith in yourself. Relying on others for advice can be a crutch. If your leg is broken, a crutch can come in handy. But if you never give up using that crutch, your leg will never get back to normal. And the same thing goes when asking what others think before you make your own decision. Take some advice, but at some point, do what feels right to you. The ultimate goal of this teaching is that we become self-reliant people. That's self with a capital S. Fully conscious people who draw upon the intelligence and qualities that are within us. Not dependent people who look to ministers, priests, or gurus for their every guidance. Number 6, don't talk about your plans. The late Peter McWilliams used to advise his readers to keep your goals away from the trolls. He was referring to those people who poo-poo whatever you'd like to do, if you're foolish enough to tell them what that is. And it can be dangerous to tell your plans even to the most loving, supportive people in your life. Derek Sivers, who popularized this idea in Keep Your Goals to Yourself, had one of the most watched ever TED Talks. And as Sivers points out, studies have shown that when we tell someone our goal and they acknowledge it, we're less likely to do the work necessary to achieve that goal. In other words, you're getting your strokes just by telling them your idea and having them say, oh, that's a great idea. The gratification that we receive from that social acknowledgement tricks our brain into feeling that the goal somehow has already been accomplished. And the satisfaction we experience in the telling removes the motivation to do what it takes to actually make it happen. And our seventh idea, get a move on. I have a friend who's writing a historical novel. He has a very good sense of history, and he writes quite well. But he's been writing this thing for years, and at the rate he's going, he'll die before it's finished. He keeps rewriting, revising, and editing the manuscript, and he always says he's getting close to the finish, but he's been saying that for years. What's the problem? Well, most likely he's full of self-doubt about his work. He may be afraid that no one will agree to publish it. He may worry that if it does see print, it will get bad reviews. Doubt is sapping his ability to take his book to the finish line. What ideas are buried because you distrust yourself? Perhaps you want to go back to school, but you may wonder if you're too old. How old will you be if you don't go back to school? Maybe you have an idea for a new business, but you don't know if it would succeed. How well will it succeed if you do nothing? Perhaps you're ready to start a new relationship, but you're afraid of rejection. So instead of joining a club or working as a community volunteer or doing some other activity where you could meet people, you stay at home watching TV and eating Haagen-Dazs. How's that working out for you? Self-doubt is mental paralysis, and frequently the only cure for it is to have the guts to get a move on. In the words of Martin Luther King, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. If doubt is challenging you and you don't act, doubts will grow. Challenge the doubts with action and you will grow. Doubt and action are incompatible. Vincent van Gogh once said, if you hear a voice within you say you cannot paint, then by all means paint, and that voice will be silenced. Now, we've discussed some ways that we cast shadows of doubt over our lives. We've discussed how self-doubt is the most pernicious of all, but there's one more thing to consider. And that is that self-doubt is really a lack of faith in God, in spirit. How so, you may ask? Well, unlike the old-time religion where God was out there somewhere and comes down to visit us once in a great while, we know that God is infinite life, expressing as each and every person in this universe. We know that God is all there is, and because God is all there is, all we are is God. And therefore, when we experience self-doubt, we are really doubting God. Doubting that we have what it takes to survive and thrive in this life means that we either don't believe we are God in expression, or if we do believe it, we think that somehow we got cheated out of our share of talents and aptitudes. Whatever, it's really just another way of saying that God is not fully present in all places at all times. Doubting yourself is denying that you're the power of spirit acting as you. And when you doubt your power, you give power to your doubt. Think about this. What stands between the sun and your shadow? You do. And you have a choice. You can turn your back on the sun and face the shadow, or you can turn your back on the shadow and face the sun. The sun radiates life. There is no life in the shadow, and life cannot thrive in the shadow of a doubt. Doubt is a dream killer. If you have a dream, that is proof that you have within you the resources to turn that dream into a reality. The infinite potential that is living as you is your source of everything necessary to the fulfillment of your dream. Writing in the Science of Mind textbook, Ernest Holmes tells us, we should say to doubt, where did you come from? You have no place in my mind. Get out. I know that the faith within me now neutralizes all doubt. There is no unbelief, no doubt, no uncertainty. Let every thought of doubt vanish from my mind, that I may know the truth, and the truth may make me free. Suppose one is unable to convince himself of the truth of the statement which he makes. How is he going to bring himself to a place of belief? By repeating his affirmation, dwelling on its meaning, meditating upon the spiritual significance of it until his thinking becomes clarified. This is the only reason for repeating treatments. For one treatment would heal if there were no doubts. Holmes goes on to say that there is no room for doubt in a treatment, but if doubts persist, repeated treatments can clear away the doubts and promote our faith in the truth. 3 or 4 years ago, there was a young man who was a contestant on the TV show America's Got Talent. He was a phenomenal dancer. I can't dance to save my life, but I've worked with so many dancers in my prior career that I know good dancing from bad dancing. He was terrific. His leaps and his twirls and spins were absolutely fabulous. In the course of the weeks that he was competing on the show, it was revealed that he was going blind. He had a somewhat rare disease that was causing his corneas to die. And one night after his performance, one of the judges said, "Good for you for following your dream in spite of your circumstances." And he replied, "Dreams don't come from your eyes. They come from your heart." It's been said that when the ties that bind the mind are broken and a person is introduced to his real self that has no limitations, the bells of heaven ring for joy. You are the universe celebrating itself as you. And if we truly know that deep down within the core of our being, we will never allow the shadow of a doubt to block the light and blind us from the sheer thrill of living. If the universe is celebrating us, and it is, then we should certainly be celebrating ourselves. If we can form the habit of rejecting the naysayers, and if we replace the negatives with "I can" positives, we will always find that we're walking in the light. If we can learn to respond to our self-doubts with "Stop that. I am a perfect, radiant, all-loving, all-conquering expression of God," then we'll be opening ourselves to the limitless good that is always available to us in every now moment. I'd like to close with a poem by an unknown author. It's titled Faith. Doubt sees the obstacles. Faith sees the way. Doubt sees the darkest night. Faith sees the day. Doubt dreads to take a step. Faith soars on high. Doubt asks, who believes? And faith answers, I. And so it is.